You've seen it 1,000 times in movies, right? The suspect sweating in a chair, all these wires hooked up to them, and that needle just jumping all over a roll of paper. The lie detector. It's this machine that promises to slice truth from deception with, scientific precision. But the reality of this thing, it's way more complicated and honestly a lot more dangerous than Hollywood ever lets on. So let's dive in. There's this great Latin phrase that just perfectly nails the idea behind the polygraph: culpa ex machina. It means guilt from a machine. And that's the whole appeal, isn't it? The belief that some impartial device can just give us an objective verdict. But as we're about to find out, this machine is anything but impartial. All right, so to really understand why the polygraph is such a mess, we have to pop the hood and see how it works. We're going to break down its most common method, which is called the control question test, or CQT. Okay, now this is the single most important thing to get. A polygraph is not a lie detector. It just isn't. It's an arousal detector. All it does is measure your body's fight or flight response, your heart rate, how you're breathing, if your palms are sweaty. The thing is, these are totally non-specific reactions. They can be caused by fear, anger, embarrassment, or, the incredible stress of being accused of a crime you didn't commit. It has nothing to do with lying itself. So how does the test even try to get around this massive problem? Well, it all comes down to comparing your body's reaction to two totally different types of questions. First, you have the relevant question, which is about the actual crime. And then you have the comparison question, which is some super vague question about a minor thing that, let's be honest, almost everyone has done. Now, the entire theory of this test hinges on this one wild idea. It assumes a guilty person will be more stressed out by the relevant question, but an innocent person will be more stressed by the comparison question. Why? Because they're supposedly worried about being caught in that small, probable lie. Now, if you're thinking that sounds completely backward, you're absolutely right. It is a breathtaking assumption that an innocent person would be less stressed being asked about a horrific murder than about being late for a meeting once. And the whole process isn't just you getting hooked up to a machine. It unfolds in 3 stages. There's a pre-test interview, where the examiner tries to build a rapport and figure out the questions. Then you have the test itself with the chart recording. And finally, there's the post-test phase, which, as we're about to see, often turns into a really intense interrogation. So, that's the theory. But what does actual science have to say about all this? Well, for decades, researchers have picked this thing apart. And the verdict is just overwhelmingly clear. Its entire premise is built on incredibly shaky ground. The scientific criticisms are devastating. The test is basically designed to fail anyone who is telling the truth but is also anxious. It's not standardized, which means 2 different examiners could get completely different results from the exact same person. The examiner's own personal belief about whether you're guilty can literally change the outcome. Oh, and it's super easy to fool with simple tricks, like biting your tongue. It just keeps coming back to that one central fatal flaw: assuming stress equals a lie. And this is where you really see the disconnect. The polygraph industry loves to claim these accuracy rates of 95%, sometimes even higher. But when independent scientists actually study it, they find that for innocent people, the accuracy can drop as low as 50%. That is no better than flipping a coin. An innocent person literally has a coin toss chance of being branded a liar. And look, if you need any more proof, this is it. The National Academy of Sciences, we're talking the country's most prestigious scientific body, did this massive review. And what did they conclude? That the polygraph's accuracy is indeterminate. In plain English, that means its real-world ability to separate truth from lies simply cannot be proven. We just don't know. So, if it's not a reliable scientific test, what is it actually for? This is where the story takes a really dark turn. The polygraph's true power isn't in detecting lies. It's in using our own biology against us as a psychological weapon. Get a load of this number: 44%. In one Department of Defense study, that's the percentage of people who failed a polygraph and then confessed during the interrogation that came right after. This stat reveals its true function. It's not a truth finder, it's a confession inducer. Clinical analysis paints an even starker picture. When the test is mandatory and the questions are accusatory, experts say it becomes functionally indistinguishable from interrogation techniques that are known to cause psychological trauma. This isn't a test, it's a coercive procedure. This analogy just makes the core problem crystal clear. Using a polygraph on someone who is already anxious or has a history of trauma is like trying to use a compass to find north while you're standing inside a giant magnet. The interrogation itself is the massive magnetic field. Sure, their physiological responses, the needle on the compass, will be swinging all over the place. But those readings are just a reaction to the scary environment, not a sign of deception. And the consequences of this are real, and they can be severe. The process has been clinically documented to cause a whole range of psychological injuries, everything from panic attacks to chronic, debilitating conditions like PTSD and major depressive disorder. And this can happen even in people who had no prior history of these issues. The test itself can become the trauma. So, all of this leads to the one obvious question, right? If the science is so clear and the harm is so well documented, why on earth is the polygraph still used so widely, especially by government agencies? It's a paradox. Well, the reason it's still around is definitely not because it's effective. Get this. In one review of over 8,500 counterintelligence screening tests at the DoD, only 0.2% led to any kind of positive finding. And of those, not a single one turned out to be a spy. Zero. No, the real reasons are all institutional. First, like we saw, it's an incredibly powerful tool for getting confessions. Second, the examiners themselves get what's called selective reinforcement. They're praised when a failed test leads to a confession, but they never, ever hear about all the innocent people they wrongly failed. So from where they're sitting, it looks like the machine always works. It's convenient for big organizations, and it survives because of the government's unwavering support, which basically shields it from all this scientific criticism. So when you put it all together, the conclusion is just unavoidable. The polygraph is a pseudoscientific instrument that preys on a fundamental misunderstanding of human biology. It flat out equates fear with deception, and in doing so, it has real, life-altering, and sometimes devastating consequences for people. And that really brings us to our final thought here. For decades, we've put our trust in this machine, in this process, to deliver the truth. But if a machine can't tell the difference between the fear of an innocent person and the guilt of a liar, then what are we really measuring? And maybe more importantly, what's the human cost of getting it so wrong?